It happened in the unlikeliest of places, an altar meant for vows and beginnings, where joy should have bloomed like confetti in the air. The priest hadn't even finished his blessing when her voice tore across the wedding hall like a blade. My wife, standing amid her family, her friends, and the groom's guests, pointed directly at me and shouted, "Cancel your cancer treatment, so her honeymoon isn't ruined." I didn't move. I couldn't. My body stiffened, frozen in place as if struck by lightning. The moment didn't feel real, not at first. Some guests let out nervous laughs, assuming it was a terrible attempt at humor, but her eyes, cold, unwavering, made it clear she meant every word. There was no hesitation, no apology in her tone. She hadn't whispered it in private. She didn't pull me aside. She made a public offering of my illness, as though my treatment were a luxury the family could no longer afford. I stood there, small, swallowed by the echo of her words and stares that followed. I could see the confusion settle on the faces around me, some looking at me like I was the one being selfish for needing help. My mouth parted, but nothing came out, just air and shame. It wasn't the first time she had asked me to sacrifice something, but this time was different. This wasn't me offering. It was her demanding. We met when my life was simpler, harder in many ways, but simpler. I was working double shifts at the factory, nights, weekends, overtime whenever I could get it. I didn't have much to offer, but I had time, and I gave it freely to her. She was young then, bright-eyed, filled with ambition and impossible dreams. She talked about traveling the world, owning a business, making something out of nothing. I knew I couldn't give her the world, but I wanted her to believe she could still reach for it. So I worked harder. I picked up more hours, gave up my weekends, then my hobbies, then the friends who used to call and check in. When she wanted to go back to school, I found a way to make it happen. When she dreamed of starting her own boutique, I borrowed against my pension. I didn't hesitate. Then her sister came to live with us. Orphaned, broke, barely holding herself together. She had no one. We raised her like she was our own. We paid for her schooling, bought her clothes, paid for therapy when she needed it. My wife made the decisions. I carried the weight. And it wasn't all bad, not in the beginning. There were still nights we laughed, made plans, shared quiet warmth. She'd lean into me and whisper, "You're my home." And like a fool, I believed her. Maybe that was my first real mistake. Over time, things shifted. The house became quieter. The warmth faded. She stopped waiting up for me, stopped asking about my day. Her sister filled the spaces between us, talking about her dates, her dreams, her latest obsessions. I watched them grow closer, thinking it was good that families stuck together. But then it was her sister's voice I heard more often than hers. It was her sister's opinions that guided our home. I came home to find decisions already made about the furniture, the paint, the vacations we were taking. No one asked me. I was just a man who paid the bills. I tried to stay present, relevant. I cooked when I could, brought home small things to make her smile. She barely looked up from her phone. The bed was colder, the conversations shorter. Her laughter no longer reached me. The day I told her about the cancer, she was scrolling through her messages. She didn't even put the phone down. Just said, "We'll figure out," then added that she'd be busy for a while with wedding plans, and asked if I could handle things on my own. So I did. I scheduled the treatments between shifts. I hid the weight loss, the nausea, the dizziness. I didn't want to burden them. I told myself it was temporary, that after the wedding, she'd come back to me, that once the dust settled, we'd find each other again. But the wedding didn't bury the truth. It unearthed it. Her scream at the altar wasn't just a moment of cruelty. It was the death rattle of something that had been dying for years. The groom, her sister's fiancé, stepped forward, stunned but composed. He raised his hand and called for silence. Then, to everyone's shock, he began to speak, not about vows or blessings, but about me. He told the room who I was, not just some in-law, not a guest. He said I was a man who raised his bride, the only father figure she'd ever known, the man who sacrificed his retirement, his peace, his health, so they could have the life they wanted. He said asking me to cancel my treatment was a disgrace. Her sister turned ghost pale. She looked at me like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. And then she collapsed right there on the altar. Panic followed. People rushed to help. But I was already slipping out the back. I didn't go home that night. Or the next. I stayed with an old friend. Someone I hadn't seen in years. Someone I'd lost touch with while trying to keep everything else afloat. He didn't ask too many questions. He just made tea, sat beside me, and let the quiet hold space where words couldn't. I didn't seek revenge. I wasn't interested in anger or bitterness. But life, if you wait long enough, has a way of balancing its own ledgers. The groom canceled the wedding, told her sister he couldn't marry into a family that treated people like currency. His family, wealthy, connected, quietly withdrew their support. They had been funding my wife's boutique behind the scenes. Without them, it fell apart, crumbled within months. Friends stopped calling her. Family began keeping their distance. The whispers never stopped. She sold the house to cover the mounting debts. I never asked how she was doing. I didn't need to. I finished my treatment. I'm still here. She called once, left a voicemail. Her voice sounded tired, hollow. She said she didn't know why she did what she did. Said she missed the way things used to be. She didn't say she was sorry, just that she missed it. I never called her back. Now I live in a smaller place, tucked in a quiet neighborhood where the sun touches my windows in the morning and the breeze carries no memory of her. I've picked up the pieces of myself I'd buried under years of obligation. Old hobbies, old music, old friends. Sometimes I sit on the porch and think of her, the girl who once told me I was her home. And I wonder if she ever truly understood what that meant. But some homes aren't built to last. Some foundations rot quietly. No matter how much you repaint or rearrange the furniture, the walls eventually give way. She taught me that. And that's a lesson I'll carry longer than the scars left by any illness.